What's up, beautiful people? It's your boy Judeo, and I'm back again with a new video. Today we're going to be checking out how the biggest banks get away with fraud, and this is by Cold Fusion. Without wasting your time, let's get to it.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Cold Fusion, where I cover anything in science, technology, business, or history. On this channel, we've seen plenty of cases of scams and frauds. But what if the very same financial institutions who we trust with our money end up committing some of the biggest frauds of all time? It's not fun to think about, but it's almost a fact of life now.
Everybody always calls JP Morgan.
Now don't get me wrong, not all banks are bad, but some of the largest financial institutions are no stranger to deceit. In this episode, we'll take a look at some of the biggest frauds ever committed by banks, and then we'll end on an exclusive story with Rob Bestian, a licensed stockbroker of over 8 years, who has agreed to publicly blow the whistle here on Cold Fusion. Rob used to work at one of the biggest banks in the United States, but has since left.
Which one?
Let's begin.
You are watching Cold Fusion TV.
Up first, we have the Wells Fargo fake account scandal. Wells Fargo, the third largest bank in the United States, ruined their reputation in one big catastrophe. It all started when Wells Fargo executives wanted their staff to meet aggressive sales targets in their financial products business. These products were things like mortgages or credit cards. Employees who met these targets were eligible for promotions and bonuses, while employees who did not meet these sales targets faced relentless pressure and even termination. Success by retail banks was measured in part by the average number of products held by a customer. So to appear more successful, Wells Fargo employees then created millions of savings and checkings accounts for customers without their knowledge or approval. Why? Because they wanted to sell multiple products to the same customers. For example, a customer with a checking account might also be given a credit card that they didn't ask for.
Wow.
To achieve the sales goals set forth by the company, bank branch staff resorted to inappropriate activities. They started using their own contact information on forms to prevent customers from discovering the scam. Employees were accused of creating fraudulent checkings and savings accounts by moving money out of existing accounts into the new ones.
Yeah, it's a company's fault because of the pressure.
This was made possible by setting the customer's PIN numbers to 0000. Now the bankers had full control of the client's accounts without them knowing. As early as 2011, the Wall Street Journal smelt a rat and ran a story of the illegal practices, but nobody really cared. Another article in 2013 was published by the Los Angeles Times. This time, it focused on the intense pressure on bank managers and individual bankers to produce ever-increasing sales and even mathematically impossible quotas, but still, nobody cared. Eventually, many of the bank's customers noticed something strange. They questioned fees on accounts that they didn't ask for or didn't even realize they owned. The influx of complaints finally drew the attention of regulatory agencies. The fraud started to gain wider attention in 2016 when a group of...
Since 2011, where the first flag was made, nobody cared until 2015.
Government regulatory agencies fined the bank a combined $185 million.
So that's my question about Wells Fargo. How far up the line did this go?
This generation of executives that either could have known or should have known. And in some cases, we talked to people and they said, look, they were told that there were suspicious numbers on the platform here, and they decided not to do anything about it. I mean, someone told us 42 debit accounts by a single banker in Southern California. Nobody said as
42.
a manager, hey, that looks a little bit fishy. Maybe I should look into that. Perhaps this is made up.
They probably were applauding him and were excited that he's killing it.
Fargo subsequently dealt with civil and criminal lawsuits and paid out over $2.7 billion.
That's good.
John Stumpf, Wells Fargo chief executive at the height of the scandal, was forced to resign. When all was said and done, the bank had created over 3.5 million fraudulent accounts.
But Wells Fargo traded its hard-earned reputation for short-term profits and harmed untold numbers of customers along the way.
I had 15 accounts at once. It was just very frustrating. And these are accounts I never opened.
15 accounts for one person, like that's just heartless. People that are still struggling to make minimum wage and you're creating 15 accounts and they are paying for the, what is it called, maintenance fee and all those shit.
Interest rates are an important part of any economy. But what if the interest rate of corporate loans, student loans, mortgages, and more were all controlled by a single mechanism, a mechanism that was fraudulently being altered? The London Interbank Offered Rate, otherwise known as LIBOR rate, is exactly that. The LIBOR scandal was probably the biggest financial crime that you've never heard of.
One way of judging how healthy they were was by how much interest they were paying to borrow cash, which would also affect the cost of mortgages and loans. The way LIBOR worked was that each bank had to estimate how much interest they'd have to pay to borrow cash. Then the rates from all the banks were averaged. That's the LIBOR rate.
In total, LIBOR itself underpins $350 trillion of value based in derivatives. By manipulating the LIBOR, the traders in question were inherently causing a cascade of mispriced financial assets throughout the entire global financial system. The LIBOR is supposed to be the total assessment of health of the financial system, because if the banks feel confident about the state of things, they report a low interest number. And if the member banks feel a low degree of confidence and see risk in the financial system, they report a higher interest rate number. The huge flaw in this approach was that the estimates that the bank gave on interest rates was being used to determine the actual LIBOR interest rate. None of the banks actually had to borrow and lend at the same rate mentioned in LIBOR. The banks merely had to tell the regulators that they would do so. In practice, they would be borrowing and lending at completely different rates. They could then profit on the difference between what they reported and what they actually traded with. Banks realized that they could form a cartel and rig the LIBOR rate in their favor. They got together and consistently fudged their numbers. They were providing inflated or deflated interest rates to regulators for years. Unfortunately, the fraud also impacted corporations and individuals who had loans based on the LIBOR. For the banks, there was a lot of money to be made. In the first quarter of 2009, Citigroup had interest rate swaps of a notional value of $14.2 trillion, and Bank of America, $49.7 trillion.
Wow.
These are huge numbers. And
obviously, man, 49.7 trillion.
Just a small change in the LIBOR rate can make them piles of cash.
Yeah.
For example, a 1% interest rate change that...
And this is greed. Why do you have to make so much? Even 1 trillion is enough. Steal that one and, okay, change the whole thing. Go back to your normal setting. At least don't be too greedy. Thieves don't know when to end it. They don't know when to stop. They just keep going.
Happens instantaneously. Could see billions in profit. And there was much affected in the real world. One example is home mortgages. Homeowners in the United States filed a class action lawsuit in October 2012. The lawsuit was against 12 of the largest banks that were fudging the numbers in the LIBOR rate, and this made mortgage repayments more expensive than they should have been. Deutsche Bank was one of the biggest participants in the fraud. They were fined $1.74 billion. ANZ Bank in Australia,
but they made a lot more than that.
Barclays Bank in the UK, and the Royal Bank of Scotland were some of the other banks involved. The fines offered were nothing compared to the money that they made.
Yeah, why is that?
Gold and Silver Market Rigging by JP Morgan.
I knew JP Morgan was going to come in play. Everybody talks about JP Morgan when they're speaking on issues like this, and I don't even know why.
In 1974, the futures market began trading in the gold and silver markets. Futures contracts are basically an agreement for two parties to trade an asset at an agreed date and price. In this case, both parties are trading gold and silver. As time went on, more and more futures contracts were created at will, essentially increasing the virtual supply of gold and silver when in reality no new metal was ever mined. In fact, the prices and the amount of gold and silver traded have very little to do with the underlying supply of metals. As you could imagine, this system was ripe for abuse. By 2018, more imaginary gold and silver was traded in a few days than was actually mined in an entire year. In 2018, only 34 tons of registered gold stocks were delivered through futures contracts, and yet 260,000 tons of gold was traded on the COMEX, which is more gold than has ever been mined in history and 86 times the annual gold mining supply. Between 2008 and 2016, JP Morgan engaged in a practice that manipulated the price of gold and silver. What they were doing was something called spoofing. This manipulative practice is designed to create the illusion of demand or a lack thereof. The goal of spoofing is to move market prices in a way that financially benefits the banks. For a very long time, this idea...
But why do they need all this money though? Even in this instance, the bankers are probably not making a lot of money. It's just the top people who are doing these things. They're the ones making all the money. It's all greed. And I won't be surprised if the government is facilitating this. I won't be surprised because it goes on for years and then they catch them and they're asking them to pay like the other one, $49 trillion, and you're asking them to pay $1 billion. There's no way. Like, how would you explain that? It has to be like the government or some high personality being involved in the same shit.
Yeah, was labelled as a conspiracy theory to summon the financial industry. In an interview with CNBC, aired in April 2013, financial whistleblower Andrew Maguire described how mysterious traders allegedly working for JP Morgan waited till most of the major markets closed and then used a separate market known as the COMEX to trade virtual silver anonymously. They used algorithms to bounce in and out of the futures market in the blink of an eye. 400 contracts a second. The thing is,
Wow.
Each contract represents 5,000 troy ounces of silver. In one instance, Maguire described unusual market movements that saw the sale of 45,000 contracts with a profit of $80,000 per contract, totaling a profit of $3.6 billion for the mystery seller. These kind of strange market movements weren't that unusual. The difference between the digital gold traded on the futures market versus the actual amount of physical gold that actually exists has now become so vast that now there are hundreds of claims of ownership on every single ounce of gold. In other words,
They sold more gold in the whole planet. They sold all the gold and they're still under the ground, but they sold everything.
for every ounce of gold exchanged in the futures market, each trader thinks that they have a claim to that gold and could take physical delivery of the metal if needed. But the thing is, hundreds more traders also think the same thing. Let's just hope everyone doesn't want their physical gold at once. In 2019, JP Morgan was accused of being, quote, a criminal enterprise by a federal prosecutor for the rigging of the gold and silver market. In September of 2020,
This is
the
actually very
Department of
recent.
Justice issued a $920 million fine for the rigging. In reality,
You see what I said? They take all this money and they give them 920. What is $920 million? I mean, it's a lot of money for me because I'm not stealing. But what is this thing for people that have sold all the gold in the world?
they could be potentially earning trillions. So ultimately, these fines are just the cost of doing business, and the practice still continues to this day.
They had been spoofing the market for the better part of 8 years, and silver, gold, platinum, palladium, I mean, all of the precious metals. This is a pretty big deal. I mean, there's always talk, and listen, I've been covering gold for almost 8 years now, and there's always talk of people saying, oh, there's some sort of manipulation going on in the market. You probably hear that in every market. But now that this actually comes up, it really kind of makes you think twice, like, wow, I mean, this is interesting. I mean, they're claiming racketeering charges. These are high claims.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
For the second half of this video,
Okay, so we're going to end the video here. If you guys want to see the rest, feel free to let me know in the comment section. But this thing, lots of people say banks are thieves. People don't want to put the money in the banks. People are putting money in ETFs, investments, and all of those things. I'm not going to say all the banks are thieves, not necessarily. And I feel like banks still have importance in the society. But as in every other industry, there are good and bad people. And it's always going to be like that. But my problem is, how do you see somebody stealing trillions and you find them $1 billion? I still have a problem with that because I can't comprehend. It means there's somebody in the government or somebody in the, is it judiciary or I don't know those things, but somebody high up who's involved in this, because they should pay. Like, that is the opportunity where you take money from them so much that you can change the whole structure of poverty or change the economy. Yeah, like, use these criminals who collect a lot of money to fix things in the country. But nah, only charge them $1 billion. Yeah, they should make me like, in fact, I should become a judge, take all this money from them. I'll be like, guys, give me all the money you have. I'm not even going to give them a price. I'll be like, give me all the money in your accounts and leave $1 million for yourself to pay your employees and fire yourself. But anyways, yeah, at least that's an eye opener. I'm not saying do not use banks, but it's something you have to be aware of and conscious about when you're using the bank. So it's one of those things. It happens, right? It's the end of this video. Let me know your thoughts. Feel free to share your opinion in the comment section. And if you want us to finish the video, also let me know. I don't want to make the video too long. That's why I don't want us to check it out right now. And we'll check out the part 2 next time if you guys want it. And also, if there's a particular video you want to see, feel free to send me the link, send me the titles, and we'll check it out together. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel. I'll see you on the next one. Have a wonderful day. Peace.